Hello, everyone, and welcome back to English Learning Podcast Every Day. I'm Ella.
And I'm Leo. We're really glad you're here with us today.
Today, we're going to have a very real, very practical conversation. We'll talk about money, budgets, spending habits, and how to express all of that naturally and confidently in English.
Money is one of those topics that people often avoid, but in real life, it comes up all the time. You talk about it with friends, family, colleagues, and sometimes even strangers. So learning how to talk about money smoothly is a powerful language skill.
Exactly. And this episode is designed for advanced learners who want to sound calm, clear, and natural when discussing finances. Not stiff, not textbook-like, just real English.
Let's start with a very common situation. Imagine someone asks you, "How are you managing your money these days?" That's an open-ended question.
Right. You don't need to give exact numbers. You can answer in a general, comfortable way. For example, you might say, "I'm trying to be more mindful of my spending lately."
That sentence is excellent. Mindful of my spending sounds natural and mature. It suggests awareness without sounding stressed.
Or you could say, "I'm on a pretty tight budget right now, so I'm being careful."
Tight budget is a very useful phrase. It's informal, widely used, and immediately understandable.
Let's hear how this might sound in a real conversation. Leo, ask me about my budget.
Sure. Hey, Ella, are you saving much money these days?
I'm trying to. I wouldn't say I'm saving a lot, but I do put a little aside every month. It adds up over time.
That sounds very natural. Notice how Ella avoided exact figures. Native speakers often do this, especially in casual conversations.
Yes, and you can also soften your answer with phrases like more or less, for the most part, or when I can.
For example, I try to track my expenses more or less. That sounds honest and relaxed.
Now, let's talk about spending habits. People often say things like, "I'm a big spender," or "I'm pretty frugal."
Frugal is a great advanced word. It means you're careful with money, but not cheap. There's a positive feeling to it.
Exactly. You could say, "I'm quite frugal when it comes to daily expenses, but I don't mind spending on travel."
That sentence shows balance and personality. It's not just about money, it's about values.
Another very common phrase is living paycheck to paycheck.
Yes, that phrase means you spend most or all of your income and don't have much left at the end of the month.
For example, when I first started working, I was basically living paycheck to paycheck.
That sounds reflective and natural, especially when talking about the past.
Now, sometimes you want to talk about cutting costs. You might say, "I'm trying to cut back on unnecessary expenses."
Cut back on is extremely useful. You can cut back on eating out, shopping, subscriptions, or entertainment.
Right, and instead of saying, "I don't have money," which can sound a bit strong, you can say, "I'm a bit short on cash this month."
That sounds softer and more conversational.
All of these expressions help you talk about money in a way that feels natural, respectful, and confident.
And confidence is key. You don't need perfect numbers or complex explanations. You just need the right language and the right tone.
We'll keep building on this conversation, looking at saving goals, financial priorities, and real-life money discussions in English.
So stay with us. We're just getting started.
When people feel comfortable, they often share a little more about their financial habits, especially with friends or coworkers they trust. You might hear someone say, "I'm trying to get better at budgeting," which is a very common and natural sentence.
And notice how gentle that sounds. It doesn't say, "I'm bad with money." It shows effort and progress. That's something advanced speakers do well. They choose words that reflect intention, not judgment.
Another phrase you'll hear is, "I keep track of my expenses." That means you regularly check what you're spending money on.
Yes, and you could expand that by saying, "I keep track of my expenses using an app," or "I keep track of my expenses at the end of each week."
Let's try a short exchange. Leo, say something about overspending.
Okay. I realized I was overspending on food deliveries, so I had to make some changes.
That's perfect. Overspending is very direct, but still natural. I might respond by saying, "Yeah, that adds up quickly if you're not careful."
That adds up quickly is a great reaction phrase. It shows understanding without giving advice unless asked.
And if you do want to give advice politely, you can say something like, "What helped me was setting a monthly limit."
That sounds supportive, not pushy. Very important in real conversations.
Sometimes money talk comes up at work. For example, someone might say, "I'm trying to save up for a house," or "I'm putting money aside for a big purchase."
Save up and put money aside are extremely natural phrases. They're much more common than accumulate savings, which sounds too formal.
Right. You could say, "I'm saving up for a new laptop," or "I'm putting a bit of money aside for emergencies."
Emergencies. That's another word you'll often hear. People might say, "I'm trying to build an emergency fund."
That's a slightly more advanced phrase, but it's very common among adults. It sounds responsible and thoughtful.
When talking about priorities, people often use phrases like, "I have to prioritize my expenses."
Or, "Right now, my main priority is paying off debt."
Paying off debt is an important expression. It means gradually finishing payments on something you owe, like a loan or credit card.
And you can soften it by saying, "I'm slowly paying off some debt." That sounds honest and realistic.
If someone asks directly, "Do you spend a lot?" you can answer in a balanced way. For example, "I'm fairly careful, but I do treat myself occasionally."
Treat myself is such a natural phrase. It shows enjoyment without guilt.
And it sounds much better than saying, "I waste money sometimes," which sounds negative.
Another advanced expression is, "I try to live within my means."
That's a beautiful phrase. It means you don't spend more than you can afford.
Yes, and it's very common in interviews or serious conversations about lifestyle.
You might also hear, "I'm financially independent," or "I'm working toward financial stability."
Those phrases sound mature and thoughtful. They focus on long-term goals rather than short-term spending.
Sometimes conversations turn casual again, like when friends are deciding whether to go out.
In that case, you could say, "I'd love to join, but I'm trying to save money this month."
That's polite, honest, and completely natural.
Or even softer, "I might skip this one. I'm watching my budget right now."
Notice how none of these sentences feel dramatic. That's the key. Money talk in English is often calm and understated.
And as an advanced learner, sounding calm and natural matters more than sounding impressive.
Exactly. You're not showing off vocabulary, you're building connection.
In longer conversations, people sometimes reflect on how their relationship with money has changed over time. You might hear someone say, "I used to be terrible at budgeting, but I've learned a lot."
That sentence works because it shows growth. Native speakers often talk about money as a learning process, not a fixed skill.
And if you want to agree or relate, you can say, "Same here," or "I can relate to that," followed by your own experience.
For example, "I can relate to that. When I was younger, I didn't really think about saving."
Notice the phrase "didn't really think about." It sounds casual and honest, not critical.
Another very common phrase is, "I try to plan ahead." That can refer to budgeting, saving, or future expenses.
Yes, and you could expand it naturally. "I try to plan ahead, especially for bigger expenses."
Bigger expenses might include rent, travel, education, or medical costs. Using that phrase keeps things general and comfortable.
Sometimes people mention unexpected costs. They might say, "Something came up and I had to spend more than I expected."
Something came up is a very useful expression. It's vague on purpose and sounds natural in conversation.
If someone reacts with empathy, they might say, "Yeah, that happens," or "That's always stressful."
These small responses are important. They keep the conversation flowing without turning it into advice or judgment.
Let's look at another short exchange. Leo, say something about tracking expenses.
"I started tracking my expenses more closely, and it really opened my eyes."
That's a great sentence. I might reply, "I know what you mean. It makes you more aware of where your money goes."
Where your money goes is a very natural phrase. It sounds much better than how funds are allocated.
Exactly. Advanced English often means simpler, more natural wording.
When talking about income, people usually avoid exact numbers too. They might say, I earn enough to get by, or I'm fairly comfortable.
Get by is an important phrase. It means you have enough to live, but not necessarily a lot extra.
And fairly comfortable suggests stability without bragging.
If income is irregular, someone might say, my income fluctuates, or it's not very consistent.
Those phrases sound professional and clear. They're especially useful for freelancers or self-employed people.
Another advanced phrase is, I try to keep my expenses in check.
That means you control your spending and don't let it get out of hand.
Yes, and it sounds very natural in conversation.
People also talk about habits. For example, I've been trying to break some bad spending habits.
That sentence shows self-awareness. You could follow it with, like impulse buying or like unnecessary subscriptions.
Impulse buying is a great term. It's commonly used and easy to understand.
And if you want to sound gentle, you can laugh lightly and say, it's a work in progress.
That phrase is extremely common. It reduces pressure and keeps the tone friendly.
In social situations, money talk sometimes appears indirectly. Someone might say, that's a bit out of my budget.
That's a polite way to say something is too expensive.
Yes, and it's much smoother than saying, I can't afford that.
You can also say, that's not really in my price range.
That's an excellent phrase. It sounds calm and confident.
These expressions help you protect your boundaries without feeling awkward.
And that confidence is what makes advanced speakers sound natural and comfortable. When conversations go a little deeper, people sometimes talk about financial decisions they're proud of. You might hear someone say, one of the best decisions I made was starting to save early.
That sentence sounds reflective and confident without sounding arrogant. It's a tone you'll hear often among fluent speakers.
When conversations go a little deeper, people sometimes talk about financial decisions they're proud of. You might hear someone say, one of the best decisions I made was starting to save early.
That sentence sounds reflective and confident without sounding arrogant. It's a tone you'll hear often among fluent speakers.
And if you want to respond thoughtfully, you could say, that makes a big difference in the long run.
In the long run is a very natural phrase when talking about money, habits, and planning.
Another common expression is, I'm trying to be more intentional with my money.
That's a beautiful phrase. Intentional suggests purpose and awareness, not restriction.
Yes, and it works well in both casual and serious conversations.
Sometimes people discuss mistakes too. For example, I learned the hard way that I need to budget.
That phrase, learned the hard way, is very natural. It shows experience without needing details.
If someone shares something like that, a good response might be, at least you learned from it.
That sounds supportive and respectful.
People also talk about lifestyle choices connected to money. You might hear, I prefer a simple lifestyle.
Or, I'd rather spend money on experiences than on things.
That sentence is extremely common and sounds very natural among fluent speakers.
If you agree, you could say, I feel the same way, or that really resonates with me.
Resonates with me is a slightly more advanced phrase, but it's widely used and sounds natural.
Another phrase you'll hear is, I'm trying to be smarter with my finances.
Notice how smarter doesn't mean perfect. It implies learning and improvement.
Exactly. That's why it works so well in real conversation.
When people talk about saving, they often mention habits like, I automatically transfer money into savings.
That sounds practical and natural. It also shows routine.
And if you want to keep it casual, you could say, I set aside a bit of money whenever I get paid.
That sentence feels very real and relatable.
In group conversations, someone might say, I'm watching my spending lately.
A simple response could be, same here, or it's hard not to these days.
That last phrase, these days, adds context without explanation.
Yes, and it keeps the conversation light.
Another useful expression is, I'm trying not to stress too much about money.
That shows emotional balance, which is something advanced speakers often express naturally.
If you want to sound reassuring, you might say, as long as I'm covering my basics, I feel okay.
Covering my basics is a great phrase. It refers to essential expenses like rent, food, and bills.
And it's much more natural than listing everything.
Sometimes money talk becomes very brief. Someone might simply say, I'm on a budget.
And that sentence alone is complete. No explanation needed.
Exactly. Fluent speakers know when to stop.
If the conversation shifts to future goals, people might say, I'm hoping to be more financially secure.
That phrase sounds thoughtful and forward-looking.
And it avoids pressure or unrealistic promises.
All of these expressions help you talk about money in a way that feels human, balanced, and confident.
And that's what advanced English really sounds like in everyday life.
In casual chats, money often appears indirectly through plans and choices. Someone might say, I'm trying to keep things low cost this weekend.
That sentence sounds relaxed and social, not financial, but it clearly communicates a budget decision.
If a friend suggests something expensive, you can respond smoothly by saying, I might pass this time, or I'm keeping it simple lately.
Keeping it simple is a very flexible phrase. It works for money, lifestyle, even emotions.
Yes, and it helps avoid awkward explanations.
People also use humor when talking about money. For example, my wallet needs a break.
That's light and friendly. It softens the message and keeps the mood positive.
Another humorous but common phrase is, I'm trying not to look at my bank account too often.
That line feels very real. Advanced speakers often use humor to make money talk less tense.
When talking about financial responsibility, people might say, I've become more disciplined with my spending.
Disciplined is a strong but positive word. It suggests control and effort.
And you can balance it by adding most of the time to sound more human.
Exactly. Most of the time is a great softener.
In conversations about work, someone might mention, I'm trying to negotiate better pay.
That's an important skill, and the phrase negotiate better pay sounds professional and natural.
If someone shares that, a supportive response could be, you deserve it, or I hope it works out.
Those reactions show empathy without giving advice.
Another phrase you'll hear is, I'm careful with big purchases.
That sounds thoughtful. You might follow it with, I usually think it over before buying anything expensive.
Think it over is a very common phrase, and it fits perfectly here.
Sometimes people mention regrets gently. They might say, looking back, I could have saved more.
That sentence feels reflective, not negative.
And a natural response could be, we all say that, or hindsight is always clearer.
Hindsight is a more advanced word, but it's often used in this exact context.
Yes, especially when talking about money or life choices.
Another expression is, I try not to compare myself financially to others.
That's a very mature sentence, and it sounds natural among fluent speakers.
It shows emotional awareness, which is part of advanced communication.
When someone talks about budgeting systems, they might say, I give myself a monthly allowance.
That doesn't mean allowance like a child. Adults use it too, very naturally.
Exactly. Monthly allowance sounds structured and practical.
You might also hear, I review my budget every month.
That sounds organized and responsible.
And if you want to keep it casual, you can say, I check in with my budget once in a while.
That phrase sounds relaxed and realistic.
People sometimes mention savings goals in a soft way. For example, I'm slowly building my savings.
Slowly is important there. It makes the goal feel achievable.
And it removes pressure from the conversation.
In everyday English, small words like that make a big difference.
They help you sound calm, confident, and natural, even when talking about serious topics like money.
Over time, people often develop a more relaxed way of speaking about money, especially when they feel secure in their habits. You might hear someone say, I'm not perfect with money, but I'm doing my best.
That sentence sounds honest and grounded.
It doesn't invite judgment and it feels very natural.
And if someone says that to you, a warm response could be, "That's all anyone can do."
Exactly. Money conversations aren't about showing off, they're about understanding and connection.
Another phrase people use when they feel balanced is, "I feel more in control of my finances these days."
That sentence sounds calm and confident without being dramatic.
Yes, and adding "these days" makes it feel current and realistic.
When people talk about the future, they often say things like, "I'm trying to set myself up for the future."
That's a very natural phrase. It doesn't explain how, and it doesn't need to.
Advanced speakers know when less information is enough.
Sometimes money talk becomes philosophical. Someone might say, "Money is important, but it's not everything."
That's a sentence you'll hear often, especially in thoughtful conversations.
And you could respond with, "Yeah, it's about balance," which sounds simple but meaningful.
Balance is a key word when talking about money, work, and life.
In friendly conversations, people may end a money topic lightly by saying, "Anyway, it's all a learning experience."
That phrase gently closes the topic without making it awkward.
Exactly. Knowing how to end a conversation is just as important as knowing how to start one.
If someone asks for advice, you can still keep it soft. For example, what worked for me might not work for everyone.
That shows respect and awareness. It's a very advanced communication skill.
And if you don't want to give advice, you can simply say, "I'm still figuring it out myself."
That sentence feels honest and humble.
In English, sounding natural often means sounding human.
Yes, imperfect, thoughtful, and calm.
When you practice these expressions, don't rush them. Let them feel comfortable in your mouth.
Say them out loud. Pause. Adjust your tone. That's how they become natural.
Talking about money doesn't have to feel stressful or awkward.
With the right language, it can feel normal, respectful, and even connecting.
And that's the goal of advanced English conversation.
To express real thoughts in a real way.
Thank you for spending your time with us today.
We hope this episode helps you feel more confident talking about money and budgeting in English.
If you enjoyed this episode, please support us.
Subscribe to English Learning Podcast every day for more natural, real-life English conversations.
We're Ella and Leo.
And we'll see you next time.